And we're live on the website. So those are all the channels. I believe Josh is working with one more attendee, and then we can get started.
Yep, we're just gonna have to give me 1 minute and let me go make sure that Bill's gonna join us as well.
While you're doing that, I just have a question. Does anybody know if Dr. Orgain?
I'm right here.
Dr. Orgain's here? Good. And Albert?
He's the one I'm working with at the moment.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
Bill McCord here. Item number 3, if you could mark that on your agenda, we'd like to lift that one from the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda for clarification.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Y'all sure are brave being video on all this. Sean needs to shave.
Yeah, I do. I sure do.
Rick, I can't see your photograph.
Norca, I cannot see Alana. Are you there, Alana?
She was earlier.
Well, I'll do my video, but I don't know why you want it.
There you go.
There you go, Doc.
Put it back. It looks better the other way.
I agree. Point of clarification, I had a note from one of the residents out off Douglas Lane that everybody's internet is off for some reason. So
What?
yep.
I drove through that area this afternoon and I noticed some utility folks out there working, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Hi, Nick.
Hello, how are you, Dr. Orgain?
I'm terrific.
Mr. Chairman, do I have something that I can say to Nick right quick before we go in session? We're not in session right now. Hey, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Sidewalks look great up and down Browns Lane. I told Zach to pass it on to you. The only complaint I get is where they're parking on the side of the road right there and put a lot of ditches in front of the Bay Point Wood Lake area. If you could pass that on, that's the only thing.
Yeah, he said something to me at the end of the week, and I know I had my guy go out there. Our contractor will be addressing any issues, but we did notice that AT&T, speak of the devil there, we did notice that some of the work that they were doing up and down Browns Lane, they were creating their own ruts.
Okay.
Our contractor, can't be held responsible for. We'll do our best to stay on them, but our best usually isn't good enough to get them to do anything.
Well, everybody really, is impressed of how it looks compared to how it started. But I think we won the hearts of many. I think you've done a good job up and down through there.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I passed along some complimentary things to those guys, and I've noticed they've really done. I feel like they've done a good job too. The concrete work is top notch, and so I think we've got a good product.
That's it. We just need, I think we need to put a few trees up and down through there if we could. If not, I'll be willing to donate some.
And that's something that Councilman Hayes has mentioned.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, so I know, we didn't have any, we weren't able to do that through the grant funding, but, you know, maybe there's some money laying around somewhere that we'd be able to put towards it.
Well, I'll talk to Councilman Hayes too, because him and I both are willing to donate something, and maybe we can get up with Mr. Puryear right there to let us buy some trees from him, get them planted.
Josh, do we have Albert on the line yet?
Yes, John. Albert is on the line. He is officially joining our meeting. So everyone at this time, I'm going to remind you to please mute your microphones when you're not speaking. And this meeting is broadcast both live on Facebook and is being recorded. If you're a member of the public, your microphone will be muted until the public comment period opens. And I'll be going through individually by either name or by phone number for your last three. So when I call out your last three, your phone will be unmuted and you'll be able to provide public comment at that time.
Okay, and I have a question for staff. The council, we're all remote, except Mr. Wilson is holding down the fort there in council chambers. But the council chambers, are they open if the public chose to come in there and be able to make their comments there?
City Hall is still closed. We encourage all public comment, either through the Zoom meeting, as 41 attendees have joined us, or by email or phone call, as several residents have made throughout the day.
Okay, so Ms. Alexander, correct me if I'm discussing something outside of the business that outside of the meeting that should be discussed after the meeting is brought to order. But I am concerned. I just received confirmation that the residents out there regarding item number 11, they don't have internet. They're not able to follow this meeting right now. This individual got a hotspot on his phone and is able to watch it. But on an issue that large, I'm concerned that people are not able to follow this meeting. The only thing I know to do, unless somebody has some better advice, is to make the decision to move item number 11 and 12 to the last items on the agenda in hopes that Comcast signal comes back up, or whatever internet they're using, comes back up and they're able to live stream the meeting. Some help here?
John, this is Staff Attorney Latisha Alexander. Under the executive order, and this is totally up to the Planning Commission, it's your decision. Number one, if you so choose, you could defer it because of this issue regarding the internet of those interested parties. But under the executive order, by law, we're only required to either live stream or, as we're doing, or we're also, in the alternative, can put up the recording within a certain amount of period. So those that could not attend by live stream or any other means will have access to the meeting. So it's up to the body to determine what they want to do with this issue.
Okay, well then we'll see what the body wants to do with the issue when we get into it. It's not for me to decide. Okay, well I'll call this to order. Before we get started, or I'm sorry, staff, are you ready for me to call this to order?
Yes,
John?
I'm ready. We're ready.
All right. Before we start, let me read a quick statement. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order number 16 and the need to limit the community spread of COVID-19, members of the Planning Commission will participate by electronic means, and the meeting will be live streamed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the members and the citizens of Gallatin. Before we can start the meeting, I need to take a roll call vote. I need a motion to hold the meeting remotely. And will anyone make that motion, please?
So motion to. Second.
I think I got a motion by Dr. Orgain and seconded by Who seconded the motion?
I did.
Councilman Fennell?
Yes.
All in favor of holding the meeting, please indicate by saying aye. We'll do it as a roll call vote. So I'll call you, actually, I'll let Josh call the roll call each time since I need to be called as well. Josh?
Mr. Strother?
Albert, you need to unmute if you're muted.
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
Chair Puryear?
Aye. Okay, so the motion has been made and approved. We will commence the meeting remotely. Let's start with the invocation. If you'll bow your heads. Dear Lord, please guide these proceedings tonight and help us make decisions in the best interest of the city. And please be with those who are in need and those who are afraid at this time. Please help us through and always remind us that we can never be parted from you. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.
Yeah.
I guess I'll stand so you get to see how much weight I've put on in the quarantine. And please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic stands one nation, God, visible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. Strother?
Present.
Vice Chair Harris?
Here.
Ms. Hibbler?
Here.
Councilman Fennell?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Dr. Orgain?
Here.
Chair Puryear?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So we'll start by the approval of minutes. Does the Secretary have any minutes to present?
I don't have an agenda, so I don't know what the dates are, but I move we approve the minutes that we have.
It's the minutes of the February 10th, 2020 Planning Commission work session meeting and the March 23rd, 2020 Planning Commission remote regular meeting. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second. Harris.
That was the second, Mr. Wilson. Any discussion on those minutes? I've read through them and they look fine. Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Josh, if you'll please call the roll. Vote a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
Chair Puryear?
Yes. All right, so motion approved and the minutes are approved. We have a consent agenda item. Since the folks who may be listening to this don't have a printed agenda or printed handout in front of them, I'll read statements. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine or non-controversial, and they do not require a public hearing and will be approved by one single motion and will not be discussed. Any member of the Planning Commission or the applicant for that item wishing to discuss an item listed on the consent agenda may request an item to be removed from the consent agenda during the public comments on the consent agenda item and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. The item will then be considered and determined by the planning commission. I believe, if I understand correctly, the public may request that an item be pulled from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda as well. Staff, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Okay, so the items that we have on the consent agenda were items 1 through 8. I know that staff has asked that item number 3, which is the resolution number 2020-061, the Reverie at Foxland Harbor. Staff has asked that that item be moved to the regular agenda, and we will deal with that as the first item on the agenda. The other items on the consent agenda, I need to read this aloud for the benefit of those who might not have a printed agenda in front of them, is resolution number 2020-072, the surety renewals and extensions, City of Gallatin. Item number 2 is resolution number 2020-060, Twin Eagles Phase 4, Section 4, a final plat. We've already said that item 3 will be moved to the regular agenda. Item number 4 is resolution number 2020-063, Kensington Downs Phase 1B, a final plat. And item number 5 is resolution number 2020-064, JL Hale Property, final plat. And item number 6 is resolution number 2020-065, Kennesaw Farms Office Park Section 1, preliminary plat. And item number 7 is resolution number 2020-066, Kennesaw Farms Office Park Section 1, final plat. And item number 8, resolution number 2020-067, Dollar General site plan. So it's all of those items, except for item 3, the Reverie at Foxland Harbor, are consent agenda items. At this time, I'll open the public comment. If there's anyone out there listening who would like to pull one of those items off of the consent agenda and place it on the regular agenda, or simply comment on it, now is your opportunity to speak up.
Phone caller with the last 3224, your line is unmuted. Phone caller with the last 3851, your line's been unmuted. Phone caller with the last 3209, your line's been unmuted.
Okay, this is Kathy Taylor, and I live in Twin Eagles subdivision, and I'm very much against having a gravel road amid all of the paved roads out here. There is no call for that except more money in the builder's pocket. We have curbs, our lawns are immaculate out here. It's a wonderful subdivision.
Ma'am, if I could stop you 1 second. What you're wanting to talk about is agenda item number 11 and 12. There will be a separate public comment for that.
Okay, thank you.
Phone caller with the last 3978, your line's been unmuted. Phone caller with the last 3005, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, I want to comment on the agenda item 11 and 12.
Thank you. When that item comes up, your line will be unmuted.
Okay.
Phone caller with the last 3018, your line's been unmuted. Phone caller with the last 3085, your line's been unmuted. Phone caller with the last 3188, your line's been unmuted. Phone caller with the last 317, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, I would like to comment on agenda item 11 and 12 also, please.
Thank you. When that item comes up, we will unmute your line.
Josh, are there any additional phone lines?
Mr. Chair, we have Scott, you've raised your hand. Scott, I'm having some issues with your login. Give me a couple minutes to fix it. Last 3411, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, I'm just want to speak about agenda 11.
Okay, when that item comes up, your line will be unmuted. Last 3588, your line's been unmuted.
I'm interested in number 11.
Last 3888, your line's been unmuted. Anyone else that's participating via the web, if you could raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this item. Scott, you've raised your hand to speak on this item.
Yeah, my request was that they consider tabling the issues on the Twin Eagles on the annexation and the rezoning, with a lot of people not being able to participate with the internet and such.
Thank you. Your comment has been noted. DPLC LLC. Your line's been unmuted. Mr. Chair, that is everyone who has wanted to speak on this item.
Very good. Thank you. And just for the benefit of those listening, I know that this can be a little confusing without the agenda necessarily printed in front of you. Hopefully you have it on screen. I think everyone that did speak were concerned about items 11 and 12. Those are on the regular agenda, and we will have a public comment. We'll make sure that you get to speak on that. So right now before us is voting. I'll entertain a motion to approve on the consent agenda items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
So moved.
Motion by Albert Strother to approve the consent agenda items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Fennell. Any discussion on those consent agenda items? Oh, I'm so sorry. Just a moment. I officially closed the public hearing. Now, we have a motion on the floor and a second by Councilman Fennell. Any discussion on those consent agenda items? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Josh, if you'll please take a roll call vote.
Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Mr. Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson? Dr. Orgain?
Aye.
Chair Puryear?
Aye. Okay, motion approved unanimously. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda, and we'll start with item number 3, which was pulled off of the consent agenda. This is item number, or resolution number 2020-061, a Reverie Point at Foxland Harbor, an amended preliminary master development plan and final master development plan. Who is, what staff members handling this? Dustin?
Dustin Shane, Gallatin Planning Department. As stated, this is part of Phase 2 of Foxland Harbor, Phase 2.5, the Reverie Point Townhomes. It's on a little less than 2 acres. It is zoned MRO in the Foxland Harbor development. They're proposing 12 townhome units, which is a reduction of what they originally proposed. To the north, in the earlier phases, you had the high-rise condo towers, which were originally slated for this area, but that has been changed now to the townhomes, which, as we stated at the work session, do provide a better transition to the single-family homes of the rest of Foxland. They're asking for a few setback and PUDE size exceptions, nothing out of the ordinary. The landscaping, they're going above and beyond with the landscaping. The architecture meets the requirements and fits in with what's already there. Stormwater, they've moved their stormwater treatment area to the east, so it's no longer underneath the pavement anymore, which is good for maintenance reasons. We did notice as we were reviewing the plans that it appears they're now proposing 210 units for the western portion of Phase 2. You'll see on your screen there, I've circled it in red. So that brings the total unit count up to 264 for Phase 2. That's still less than the original 284, which was in 2008, but it does seem to bring it up from previous approvals between now and 2008. So we just want to, we recommend that as a minor amendment, but we wanted to get the Planning Commission's approval on that to make sure they were okay with that unit count going back up, but not to the point that it was originally approved at in 2008. So we just wanted y'all to be aware of that. Thank you.
Do we have a representative for the applicant online?
Jim or anyone with CSDG, if you raise your hand, let me know who you are, or if you're a phone-in caller, you can unmute yourself. Mr. Chair, no one is indicating that they're representing this item with CSDG.
Okay. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for staff or any comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. We need to vote as to whether this is a major or a minor amendment. I'll make a motion that it's a minor amendment.
Second.
So we have a second by Dr. Orgain. Any discussion on major or minor? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Josh, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Dr. Orgain?
Aye.
Chair Perrier?
Aye. So motion carries unanimously. Now, that was a major or minor, so we have determined that it's a minor amendment. Any discussion on the item itself? Seeing none, then I'll make a motion, or I'll entertain a motion to approve. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve.
A motion by Matt Harris to approve the item,
Second.
seconded by a voice signature. It sounded like Dr. Orgain.
It's not.
It's Albert.
Albert, thank you. So we have a motion to approve.
We're twins, Albert.
With a second by Albert Strother. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Josh, if you'll please take a roll call vote.
Mr. Strother,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler,
Aye.
Councilman Fennell,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Dr. Orgain,
Aye.
Chair per year.
Aye. Okay, so motion passed unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to items number 9 and 10, which are both Meadow Glen at Fairway Farms, Section 3 and Section 4, have both been deferred at the request of the applicant. So we'll strike those and move to item 11. And this is where I need to ask members of the commission what y'all want to do here. The internet signal is compromised out there. I am in communication with one resident who just, he didn't text me about the item, he just texted me about the internet situation out there. He says that the internet is back up, but the signal is very weak. It's better than before with his hotspot cell signal. Not sure how many residents are able to see this meeting. I am concerned about discussing an annexation item when people are not able to be part of the meeting. But I also know that we may be having remote meetings for months, and that could be a problem every time out there. So discussion.
What's the advice of legal?
This is Latisha Alexander, staff attorney. As I stated earlier, under the executive order, we're only required to either live stream, and if that's not possible, then we have to provide a recorded recording of this meeting within 2 days under the governor's executive order. What I will say is it seems like at least maybe perhaps 5 people have already stated that they're going to comment regarding this item per an earlier discussion on the comments. So it's up to this body, but you also want to take in consideration the applicant on this matter. But as I said, legally, whether it's live streamed or recorded, we are within the bounds of the executive order regarding a public meeting.
Could I mention something, John?
Yes, sir. Dr. Orgain.
I think most of the people who are going to speak have similar opinions, and we're not for sure wanting to keep somebody from stating an opinion, but very often when the opinions over and over are redundant, one spokesperson could have done it for everyone, and there's not necessarily more strength in having 15 people say the same exact thing.
So here's a couple of options for you. I know we have a problem with the internet going out here on the farm kind of frequently, but usually in about 20 minutes, they've got it patched back up and it's back up and strong. We could move items number 11 and 12 to the back of the agenda. There's only a couple of other items to put in front of it, but it buys 10 or 15 minutes just in hopes that the signal gets strong again. Of course, it could go out again too. I will say if this were an item that Planning Commission were voting on, such as a revision to a site plan that wasn't going back to council, I would be very concerned about voting. But this annexation item will go to council. So have an opportunity to contact their council person and certainly write a letter if they're opposed to it or for it, and get that to their council person. I'm in favor of moving forward with it because we have heard from several callers, but I am concerned. I hope that everybody out there is able to view this meeting. Discussion?
Chair Prior, I think we probably ought to move on with it and discuss it this evening.
Okay. Matt's in favor of moving forward. Is there any other discussion? We don't need to take a vote, a roll call vote on moving forward, but does anybody have any discussion on that? Well, seeing none, then we'll move forward. Item number 11 is resolution number 2020-058, Twin Eagles, Phase 15, annexation and plan of service. There will be a public comment with this. That will come in just a moment. First, we'll hear a staff report. Which staff members handling this item?
Dustin Shane, Gallatin Planning Department. All right, this is for an annexation for the 15th phase of Twin Eagles and a plan of service. The applicant is proposing to add on to the Twin Eagles development. As you can see on the map, it will be adjacent to the earlier phases, and it will also have an ingress-egress route connecting to Douglas Road, or Douglas Lane, which has long been a goal of the city to get more ingress-egress out of Twin Eagles with the amount of homes that's gone in there. The shaded area on the screen is the area that they're proposing to annex. It's about 15 acres. Now there are, let's see here. We've done a report on the annexation and determined it will be revenue neutral for the city based on the amount of maintenance obligations that will be taken on in the long term. It'll require GPU working with White House Utilities to come in and take over water service. The utilities will be coming in from the south and from the east from the existing phases of Twin Eagles. There is a petition out by neighbors and concerned residents basically proposing some conditions to this development, including that the access road be paved. We had spoken to the applicant earlier that they preferred to have a gravel road as that access point to Douglas Lane, but it is our position that the road should be paved. The residents are also requesting that. They're also requesting some other bulk type regulation conditions put on it, as far as requiring the lots closer to Douglas Lane to be at least 2 acres, moving back to 1 acre as you get further east from Douglas Lane. It's worth pointing out that the current county zoning is actually less strict than this 2 acre minimum that the petition speaks of. They're also wanting that access route to only be for emergencies and for it to be signed as such. We also had a letter from Mr. Carmen who stated that the county will want the developer to pave or to widen Douglas Lane all the way to State Route 25, but we don't know exactly if that's the county's position. That's just what one of the letters we received stated. So, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a representative for the applicant here or online?
Chairman Puryear, this is Andy Leith with Green Lid. I'm also here with Randy, the owner.
Andy, do y'all have any, would you like to comment?
Well, certainly we have Randy nor myself, either one has seen this letter from the community. I don't know if the gravel road is sort of getting taken out of context for what we are proposing here. Definitely are not proposing a permanent solution with a gravel drive. And we can get into that later if you want to allow the public hearing here, the public comment, so that we can address maybe even some more concerns that might be brought up. I'll do whatever the body wills here. We can jump into our presentation here, or let the public speak first so that we can address some of their concerns as well.
Andy, let me give you a chance, and for the public's benefit, so that they can hear your presentation, I'll give you a chance to speak both before and after the public comment. The after, so that you can respond to whatever they may bring up. I haven't seen this petition either, so I'm trying to read it real quick. But go ahead, Andy. Go ahead and y'all do your presentation.
Well, from the work session until now, Randy and I have spoke, and there seems to be the point of contention here, besides some of these new concerns being brought up with lot sizes and things along Douglas, and maybe I address that in round 2 after the public speaks, but the paved road versus the gravel access, I think what everybody really is trying to achieve here is something for emergency vehicles to access the subdivision from an alternative route. Randy has spoken to the fire department. I've had some conversations sort of on the side with the sidebar with engineering. We've tried to scour through the zoning ordinance and through the subregs. And what we would petition the engineering and planning commission to do here is allow a graveled access road that meets the fire code for emergency access only to this section of the subdivision until such time we can develop all the way to Douglas Lane. And of course, at that time, you would have a paved city street, 24-foot wide, curbs and sidewalks. Until such time, the road would remain blocked off to the public, general use of the public, and just be for the benefit of emergency access vehicles. That would be what we would request as far as the gravel road's concerned. And with the other, what we're proposing here is exactly the same as you've seen throughout the whole entire Twin Eagles development, the same houses, same construction, nothing new. And of course, the development over there stands for itself as far as what kind of product Mr. Jones is going to build. So that's where we're standing at right now with the road construction and what we're proposing. And I've got some more reasons that I could give to the planning commission if they would like to know some further reasoning behind it, why we're proposing the gravel access road at this time, as opposed to completely paving out through there. But that's sort of where we're at right now. And I know that's one concern of the community here, to want a paved road. And I don't know if maybe they thought that it was going to stay that way forever. Not necessarily. Some of the other concerns here, and again, I'm going through this quickly because Dustin has left it up on the screen here. I'm not sure where they might want the roundabout out with emergency exit only, but I doubt the city of Gallatin will be in favor of that item, since the whole entire thing would be in the city limits, or the whole entire development. But I'll stop for now, Chairman Puryear, and let y'all ask questions or let the public comment, and then I can jump back in there.
Okay. Before we move to public comment, I asked staff to give a report, but I should have also asked our city engineer, Nick Tuttle. He's present. Nick, does engineering have any comments on this item?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is Nick Tuttle with engineering, and I don't know that there's much more that I can say that hasn't already been said. Dustin has alluded to the fact that the staff does recommend that we do pave the connection that goes out to Douglas Lane, and that it's based on good engineering practice, and the fact that this planning commission has expressed to staff on a number of occasions the desire to have the connection back to Douglas Lane. And so I know we've discussed a little bit about emergency access, but I think it goes beyond just simply emergency access. I think it's again, back to good engineering practice where we've got multiple ways to get in and out of the subdivision, especially when we got 480, I think it's 475 units that are approved currently, not counting what we're expecting with this new annexation and approval. Just, again, beyond emergency access, just simply access to and from the neighborhood is important for us to have here and good planning. So I'd be happy to discuss a little bit more about that too if you guys have any questions.
Well, I have one question, Nick. During the approval of any previous phases of Twin Eagles, has engineering provided comments to the applicant that they would need a second access before additional phases were approved?
We have, and it was actually phase 14 that we had an extended discussion, we, the staff, and at Planning Commission when the phase 14 was brought to the Planning Commission. And it was at that point, we had already, the city altogether, staff and the commission, really wanted to see some connection with phase 14. There just wasn't any natural connection to be made because there was no road frontage. But the commission and staff stated at that point that the next annexation in addition to Twin Eagles, the city would be requiring an access to Douglas Lane. And so that's why we brought it back to you again with that recommendation. Well, one of the reasons, in addition to just being good practice and something that would be really recommended or strongly supported from the emergency access standpoint. So this isn't a new idea or a new concept. It's something that we've discussed for years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill McCord. The petition alludes to mostly comments related to the master development plan that was submitted with the rezoning and not the annexation itself. The resolution for annexation is for approval, and that's the staff recommendation. I don't know if you wanted to talk separately about the issues related to the master development plan. It seems like most of the comments and discussion have related mostly to the master development plan, but also if, just in case we don't have a separate presentation beyond what's already been exclaimed already, that our recommendation on the resolution for the master development plan with rezoning is for approval as well.
Okay, I'll explain that for the benefit of everyone listening. Item number 11 is the vote on the annexation and plan of service. Item number 12 is also in regards to Twin Eagles, and it's voting on the details of the rezoning with the preliminary master development plan. I imagine that normally we would have a public hearing on item number 11, whether we should zone it or annex it, and then we would have a public hearing on item number 12, the specifics, lot size, the road, everything else. In the interest of time, I encourage you, when you're making your calls in, your public comment, go ahead and speak on both items. They're connected. We will vote on them one at a time. Otherwise, you have to stand in line and call in twice. I hope that's not too unorthodox. The city attorney will correct me if I'm handling this wrong, but I think that your public comment should be in regards to both items. Latisha, is that okay?
Staff Attorney Latisha Alexander, I do not have a problem with that as long as it's made clear to the public that you will be speaking on both issues if you desire to make a public comment.
Very good, very good. So if you want to speak on the details, that is, I'm speaking to the public, say I'm calling to discuss items 11 and 12. 11 being the annexation, 12 being the specifics of the preliminary master development plan. So at this time, I will open up a public comment. And Josh, if you'll guide us through that process.
I have a phone caller. Your last three is 224. Your line's been unmuted.
Yes, sir. My name is Jimmy Cunningham. I'm a resident of Douglas Lane. I'll just speak very quickly since I know there'll be several other comments. The concern I have is the in general traffic that will be added to Douglas Lane. I'm a retired firefighter and been first responder for several years. And I've driven trucks on roads such as Douglas Lane, and there are no shoulders. There's a lot of concern just for the enhanced ability for traffic. Even though we're talking right now emergency exit, that's one of my big concerns. Is it going to remain emergency only? And either way, I'm a bit concerned on emergency vehicles trying to access a gravel road. Been there, done that in all sorts of weather, and it's not as easy as it sounds sitting here now when it's nice outside. But the other part of it is just the safety of Douglas Lane itself. Trying to even meet, in fact, this past week, the county was repairing a big dip in the road that actually had to be dug out and then rebuilt. And anything like that, if any of you have driven on Douglas Lane, you'll see there are no shoulders, and even on the edges of the blacktop, excuse me, itself is cracking. So just a couple concerns there, basically with life safety, and I'll defer to Mr. Carmen. I think he'll speak a little bit later than the other commenters.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Hey, John, this is Latasha Alexander, staff attorney again. Please make sure they do designate which item they are making their comment.
Okay.
Mr. Carmen, your line has been unmuted.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, I guess I'll speak to both of these. Of course, we understand he's annexing a portion that's towards the back. I've just seen the plat when you put it up just a minute ago. So thank you for putting that up for our clarification on what was actually being annexed. Appreciate that. Our major concern here as a community, we can appreciate Twin Eagle subdivision and everything that's going on back there. Our major concern is the last 5 to 7 years, this road, this area has, been more of estate type homes. And I've shared with you all via email and a couple on conversations on the phone. Our request as a community is basically just to try to keep, especially the property that's closer to Douglas Lane, in more conformity to what's here currently. We definitely understand the need for smaller starter type homes, but we would prefer, especially on the first 10 to 15 acres, there be some kind of progression. I think in my email I mentioned earlier today, here on Douglas Lane, we're not aware of any lots under the size of 2 acres. We do know that the county zoning does allow for 1 acre lots in its current zoning. We're just asking for, especially for the acreage that's facing Douglas Lane, that those houses face Douglas Lane and be on lots conforming to the current sizes that we have out here, and that they be larger homes. And then also, we'd like to see the next 10 acres or so be more of 1 acre lots with larger homes, and slowly progress into, the 3 houses per acre that Mr. Jones is wanting to do, just to try to keep some conformity out to our area out here. As far as the road goes, that's probably our biggest concern. It is mine. I have 2 teenage daughters that drive. And this is a very narrow road, especially in several places. Every morning when a school bus is running, if you're on the road, you have to get off the road so the school bus can go by. Dump trucks that come up down this road for whatever reason, you have to get out of the way. There's no shoulder, there's no area for us to get off. In fact, just this week, I drive a 2500 Dodge Ram with mirrors that stick out for trailers. Another Dodge Ram just like mine came up. We both had to get off the edge of the road just so we could pass without hitting our mirrors. So we're just concerned about the extra traffic. I'm also very concerned about the proposal for a gravel road. I know that there's a similar road like that comes out the back of Cambridge on the Highway 25. When those trucks come in and out, it always leaves a mess. And I understand that it's being proposed as emergency exit only. but I'm also well aware that it would probably, most likely, get used for construction use, for big trucks, construction trucks, concrete trucks. It's just, that's how that goes. And we're very thankful as a community that Miss Judy over there at the County Road Commission, who I spoke to this week in person, on the phone, I should say, we're very thankful they've been working diligently to repave our road. And we've been wanting that for quite some time. But the thought of having additional traffic up and down this road, especially larger trucks, which would eventually happen on a road that we're hoping to get finally after years of requesting repaved, we're just concerned about how that's going to be handled. I do know that Bob Goodall recently had a development over Old Douglas that was approved. But part of that approval was he had to widen the road because it's similar in size to our road. And in my conversation, Miss Judy, she did say that it would make a lot of sense if the road was widened from this entry point all the way back out to 25, and felt like that shouldn't be borne by the taxpayers of the county.
No, I agree with you.
For a city development. So that's my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. Who is the next person who would like to speak?
I have Andrew Finney, and then I'm going to take a couple of phone callers, and then Victoria Hagan.
Okay, and let me remind those wishing to call in, we want to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to speak. If you can, please try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes, maybe 4, just so that we can get everybody in. I'm more afraid of y'all losing internet signal out there before everybody gets to speak. Thank you.
Right.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Andrew Finney. I live on Douglas Lane and love it out here. I love living close to Gallatin in Sumner County. And we encountered a similar scenario a couple of years ago with the county in a development that was proposed or requested on our street. One of the big, I won't go into the details of it, one of the big issues that came up was the ingress and egress based on the size of Douglas Lane, the amount of traffic, the quality of the vehicles that would be coming up and how large or small they would be, rather the size of them, how big they'd be. That is a real issue with Douglas Lane. I'll just concur with what Mr. Carmen said. It's accurate. We all enjoy this way of life. It's one of the reasons we've built and invested in our properties out here. Don't want to stand in the way of development, but just would like to make sure that is preserved. And as it is currently, Douglas Lane cannot handle, especially if it's emergency vehicles. Like you said, if there's a bus coming down the road, it goes right in front of my driveway. You cannot pass on this road going opposite directions when a bus or a large vehicle is coming down the road. So that would require some substantial enhancements in the road. No shoulders as well. Again, if there's a gravel drive, I recognize that the goal would not be that it would stay gravel. However, we could only assume that there's not going to be someone out there preventing cars and trucks and traffic from going in and out that way. And so it would be, bringing a tremendous amount of gravel onto the road and causing a lot of debris. So there's just multiple concerns with that. Doesn't mean they can't be overcome, but there just is a lot that's going to change when you go from, and this is again on items 11 and 12, when you go from agricultural zoning to residential zoning, which this road is not ready or equipped to go to with the concentration of houses that's expected to come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll take our next caller, and let me remind you to please state which item or items you're speaking in regards to, probably 11 and 12.
If your last 3 is 851, your line's been unmuted. If your last 3 is 209, your line's been unmuted. Victoria Hagan, your line's been unmuted. Victoria Hagan, your line's been unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, I live out here on Gallatin Road on Douglas Lane, and I am talking about items 11 and 12. Our concern is definitely the safety of our community with the traffic, the added traffic that will be out here. My concern was I thought I heard a councilman stating earlier that there's a multiple use particular thing as well. And I was a little concerned about what multiple use is. That, are they all going to be single family homes? And with the gravel road being out there, it's definitely a concern of mine is with the economy being what it is, if it's allowed to be a gravel road at this point and the economy goes bad and we have an issue, we could go into a recession or a depression at this point. And with that, would it stay a gravel road? Then who maintains that gravel road? I concur with everything Mr. Carmen said as a community out here, and we're just truly concerned about the welfare of our area, if that makes sense. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagan. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak?
If anyone else is signed in via computer with your name, if you could raise your hand to let me know you'd like to speak. I have Scott. Scott, we ran into the same problem. It should be just a minute for Scott. If your last three is 005, your line's been unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please state your name for the record.
I don't want to reiterate everything that's been said previously because I do agree with it, particularly in the size of this road. It's just very narrow. But there is one issue regarding traffic I think has been a little overlooked. Now, if this remains as an emergency thing and somebody monitors it, which I think is impossible, obviously the traffic coming on onto Douglas Lane will be limited. However, when you get to the end of Douglas Lane, you now have to go on 25. Most people are making a left and going down to 109. Today, coming out of the development, it is backed up for at least a quarter mile between the hours of about 6:30 and about 8 o'clock. You cannot get out. So now you're going to make another egress on the Douglas Lane, which is a little bit to the east of it. It's going to be even worse. And the county's certainly not going to do anything about it. They just remodeled all that for the other development. I just think it's very foolish to do it this way.
Sir,
thank you for my time, and it was commenting on 11 and 12. Thank you.
What is your name, sir?
Jack Hagan.
Okay. Thank you.
If your last three is 018, your line's been unmuted.
And let me please remind you to state your name and which items you're addressing.
085, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, this is Scott Goodwin, and I agree with everything that everyone has stated previously. I think the one thing I would encourage as well is the fact that I think they need to be taken into consideration when that development is completely built out, the 60 or 80 acres. How will that impact traffic on Douglas at that point in time? Because it is a matter of time before that would have to be implemented and added. And I think a feasibility study should have been included in this on how would that impact that road currently, but also when the plans that they're hoping to do is carried all the way out. And I think if that was put into play, that would probably validate some of the things that people have been talking about, that this road will never handle that, even if they widen it some. And I'm talking about 11 and 12.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Scott, your line's been unmuted.
I'm sorry, did you say we have another speaker?
if you're signed in as Scott, your line's been unmuted. Katie Carmen, your line's been unmuted.
Hi, I just want to say that I agree. I'm commenting on number 11 and 12. I want to agree with all the things my neighbors have said, but I'm also going along with what Scott mentioned about the full plan. I'm curious to see what his, Mr. Jones' full plan for the development is. I don't think anybody has seen that yet. And I'm just, curious to see what he has in store and has planned and how much traffic would that bring to Douglas Lane? Because again, I don't think that our road can handle all that, but I'm just curious to see what his master plan is for all of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmen. Do we have any more people who would like to speak, Josh?
If your last three is 018, your line's been unmuted. Last three of 888, your line's been unmuted. If you're logged in as DPC LLC, your line has been unmuted.
Yes, this is David Patton, live on Douglas Lane. Just like to comment that I'm in agreement with the previous speakers and appreciate y'all's time to listen to us.
And Mr. Patton, are you discussing both items 11 and 12?
I'm sorry, yes, sir, I am 11 and 12.
Thank you.
Last three of 317, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, my name is Beth Coons. I'm speaking of agenda item 11 and 12. I do agree with everything that has been stated previously. The gravel road, I think, is, not conducive to what we'd like to see around here, especially the one that they're proposing at Sparrow Drive at Beacon, where that intersection takes place. That's on an incline, and if it's gravel, it will get rocks all over our roadways and damage them. And I too have traveled on Douglas Lane. It is very narrow, even for a small SUV. In fact, I usually try to be a little more attentive when I'm on that road because some places there are no shoulders. So I would like to see a traffic feasibility study done on that road. If one has not been done, I would have thought that would have been one of the first things. But I appreciate your time and listening to me and the other people here in our subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Josh, do we have more callers?
Andrea Binkley, your line's been unmuted.
Thank you. I'm also a resident here on Douglas Lane and also a local real estate broker. And I'm not trying to be repetitive. I know you're hearing the same issues over and over, but it is a dangerous road. There are no sides. And honestly, I love the road the way it is. It's got beautiful canopy trees over it. It's full of character. And that's why a lot of us moved out here. As far as the real estate side of it goes, why hasn't there been a feasibility study? And if so, where is it? Why can't we see what's going on? We're going from agricultural to a higher density neighborhood, and there should be some conformity. So I appreciate y'all's time and listening to us and what we have to say, but we do have some legitimate concerns.
Thank you, Mrs. Binkley. Do we have another caller?
Renee Goodwin, your line's been unmuted.
Hi, I am also checking in on 11 and 12, and I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that's been said. My family, this is our forever home, and we've saved for years to be able to make this happen. And like Andrea said, there's a beautiful canopy of trees that goes right along the area there on Douglas, that with this new entrance that will, a big portion of that will be cut away. Not to mention the road is extremely narrow. I just have a small little Camry and sometimes have to pull over into someone else's drive just to be able to let a big truck by. And I can't imagine all of the trucks and everything that will be using this quote emergency entrance. I would imagine it's going to be used for construction trucks. There's not going to be anyone policing that. And then also people that don't want to wait in line, like the previous caller said, they're going to be coming out that gravel or paved, whichever it ends up being, and trying to get out on Douglas in the mornings. And it just, there's no way it can handle the traffic. It's just, I can't imagine that there won't be cement trucks and just trucks that go back and forth with construction and building that are going to be coming up and down this road. Even at the end of Douglas out on 25, where they built a new home, we had to wait for 10, 15 minutes just for them to be able to get a bulldozer off of a trailer in to be able to move gravel to cut their drive in. I mean, it's just hard to handle even when a new home is built on Douglas. So I just wanted it to be noted that we're in agreement with the previous callers, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodwin. Do we have any more callers?
If your last four is 411, your line has been unmuted.
Yes, this is Eamon Binkley, resident on Douglas Lane. I wanted to speak about issue 11 and 12. I guess my thing is, obviously everyone's spoken about the width of the road. One of the things that no one has brought up is that our deed, or at least my deed, says that my property starts 11 feet from the center line, and a lot of our lots out here are, 10, 5 acres, larger agricultural type of lots, and there are a lot of fences and cows and horses and all of that type of stuff out here. And at the end of the day, possibly making the road wider, everybody's complaining about it kind of, but on the same hand, that's what everybody likes too, is that we're out here. A lot of people have invested their life savings into building these estate type homes, and this is all going to be kind of thrown away for the good of a builder, and I would hope that y'all at least consider, when you do go into the planning phase, that you allow or hopefully mandate that the builder build some homes that fit more in line with what's already out here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And did you say your name is Eamon Binkley? Well, let the record show that Mr. Binkley. Do we have any other callers?
Last three of 253, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, my name is Austin Wheeler, and I live on Wildcat Run. This is talking specifically about 11 and 12. I just concur with the other callers. This area just doesn't have the infrastructure to handle this level of development, especially on Douglas Lane. It just needs to be considered in future development to hopefully improve the infrastructure to allow the progress that's going on right now. There's just too much traffic that's going through this area, and it just needs to be considered in future development. Thank you.
Brad Taylor, your line's been unmuted.
Hi, this is Brad Taylor at 565 Douglas Lane, echoing a lot of the comments that have already been made concerning items 11 and 12. Want to remind everyone that this is an agricultural area. There's a lot of heavy commercial agricultural equipment that goes up and down this road every day. Much of that blocks both lanes of traffic from one ditch to the other ditch. You can't get by them. So having a plan of making it an emergency road for this neighborhood isn't a good idea with the blockages that happen routinely with the equipment that travels this road. Also want to expand on the traffic congestion issue that was mentioned earlier at Highway 25 and 109 in the mornings and the evening. It's also very congested leaving Twin Eagles in the morning, and I must assume, and I think it would be foolish for us to not consider that a large amount of the people that live in Twin Eagles are going to try to bypass that congestion by using this emergency only road to exit on Douglas Lane, which is going to just increase traffic on a road that can't handle the traffic. So I feel that those two reasons are good food for thought on why this shouldn't happen. Thank you.
If you are logged in as Heater D55, your line has been unmuted. Brian Goodwin, your line's been unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is Heather Patton, and I live on Douglas Lane. I just want to speak to the item number 11 and 12. And I just wanted to say that I agree with everyone that's been speaking from this neighborhood, because the streets are narrow and the trees are beautiful that overlap the street. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing this and for having this on Zoom. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Patton. I think you called out another name, Josh, and that was Brian G.
Brian Goodwin, your line's been unmuted.
Yes, I'm calling in regards to 11 and 12 also. I live out here on Douglas Lane, and I don't want to totally regurgitate what everybody else has already stated. I'm in agreement with everything pretty much that's been said. I think a big major issue is the fact of the width of the roads. I pull a trailer back and forth through here also, and if I pass a average size vehicle, there's a standstill happen. And I you know, as it's been stated, you have dump trucks and big heavy equipment. You do have to get off the road, and there are no sidewalks, there's no shoulders, there's nothing but a ditch. And I know that there'll be people getting in those. But like I said, and secondly, I'm sorry, the emergency only exit, as was stated earlier, there's nobody going to be patrolling that or watching that, and it will be a landslide of cars coming out there anytime they can't get out the opposite direction. So I appreciate your time. I just wanted to voice my concerns and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Are there any other callers, Josh?
Josh, you need to unmute your mic.
Glenna Carpenter, Julie Vero, or June, your line has been unmuted.
Glenna Carpenter here. I live on Sparrow, so I'm also one of them that's concerned about the dirt road coming out here in all paved roads. It may be temporary, but we don't know how long temporary would last, since the other end is what's being built on. Also, it seems that this should have been planned earlier, that now we're faced with no other way for all these 400 to 500 homes for people to get out, and there only be the one exit. But is there any other way that they can do away with that pretty pond with a fountain and have that as another exit? I think they own some of that property. I'm not sure, but just my thought, and thank you for hearing me on 11 and 12.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Do we have any more callers, Josh?
Pascal or Reagan, your lines have been unmuted.
Hi. I would like to talk about items 11 and 12. I mean, the road out here, it's very nice. I love it out here, but driving it can be very dangerous, as my neighbors have told. And I also ride my horse out here along the road, and there is barely anywhere to go when a car is coming. It's hard. There's barely any places to get off the road, and it just becomes very dangerous. So, and thank you for your time for listening, and that's it.
Thank you for calling, Reagan. If you're still on the line, what is your last name?
Carmen.
All right. Thank you, Reagan.
Pascal, your line's been unmuted.
Sorry, Josh, I pushed the wrong button.
Last three of 224, your line's unmuted.
Oh, it's been mentioned.
If you could state your name for the record and which items you're addressing.
Julie Vero.
Yes, I'm speaking to agenda item 11 and 12, and I really don't have anything new to say. I just want to stand in support with what's already been said. I agree with everything that's been presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Vero. Do we have any more callers?
Pascal, did I cut you off?
No, Josh, I just pushed the wrong button. That's no worries. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's everyone that has raised their hand to speak.
Okay, I want to take just a moment. There were several that apparently raised their hands, but they didn't make a connection, and I want to make sure that they had a chance to speak. If you are ending in 851-209, Scott, 005-108-018, 888-411, or Brian 6. Those are the ones that we didn't get a response from. Can you raise your hand again, and we'll call on you one last time?
We do have one from somebody signed in as Galaxy Note 10 Plus.
Okay, that's a new one, and we can take that. Do any of those that I've called out, did they raise their hand again?
They have not.
Okay, then let's take one from the Galaxy. If you would state your name for the record and which item you're addressing.
Caller with the last 3253. Last call for caller 253.
Josh, caller 253 has already made comments.
I did.
Galaxy Note 10, if you could give us your name, please.
All right. Yes, this is Karen Goodwin. Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. This is in reference to items 11 and 12. And I agree with what all of my neighbors in the Douglas Lane area have said. I think we can all agree that there's a dramatic difference between the large acreage tracts that are through here and a subdivision that, you know, wants to put 3 or 4 homes on one little acre. And which brings to mind, you know, I'm very curious how a subdivision that already has 500 existing homes on it would be even allowed to happen. I'm just shocked that there's only one way in and out of that subdivision with 500 homes. That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. And just in general, this side of Gallatin, the traffic is awful. Coming off of Douglas, trying to get on 25, it would make it a nightmare. And, you know, just, I mean, what's been done about any of the traffic that's in this area, in the 109 area, 109 Long Hollow? It's all the apartments that have come in and all the starter. I'm not against starter homes. They're great. I've lived in them. But we moved out here to have acreage. And it's just very disturbing that a builder with a lot of money can come in here and just change everything. It's just, it seems wrong. And if I can just add one other thing, something that was said very early on that I take exception to, that one member could speak for the majority or a lot of people. And I think that that's disrespectful, because we are all voters and taxpayers, and we all deserve to have our voices heard. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodwin. Josh, do we have any other callers?
Sandy, Ruth, or Ron, your lines have been unmuted. Sandy, Kent, or?
Yes, this is Sandy Kent, and I'd like to make a comment on agenda 11 and 12. I have lived out here in this neighborhood for almost 40 years. No one has made mention in how bad the road itself is in regards to the S-curve coming from Red River Road towards where this gravel driveway will be put. My home sits next to the farm this is off of. It is a nightmare going around that curve when there is other people coming. And I think everybody needs to take in consideration how dangerous it is to have large trucks. And we all know that's going to be a have to if you're building a subdivision. I also have questions in regards to when they're building these homes, them drilling in rock and them use of dynamite in around here. I don't really think the homeowners out here, myself right next to it, nor the other ones down the road, is going to appreciate that, because where it came across the back of the property and built up in that area, when they would do the blasting, I could stand in my yard and feel the ground rumble under my feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Kent. Josh, do we have any additional callers?
Ron, your line's been unmuted. Ron? Last call for Ron. Mr. Chair, I think that is everyone who joined the conference.
All right. Seeing no other callers, we will close the public hearing. And I'll just say, I'm glad we moved forward with this because we had, I'm pleased that we had 21 people call in and speak. So we had, I think we've made sure that everyone has been, or was able to be heard. So I'm glad the internet was back up. At this time, I promised the applicant that we would give a chance for them to respond now that they've heard the neighbors' concerns and they've seen the petition and have had a chance to read through that. So let me take the discussion back to Andy Leaf, the representative for the applicant. Andy, do you have comments at this time?
Sure, yes, this is Andy with Greenlee Design. I'm here with Randy Jones as well, just at the table with me. And it sounds like that everyone's in unison that they have concerns about the traffic. And had questioned maybe why we have not done a traffic study. There was a traffic study done on the Twin Eagles development many years ago, and Nick can tell you that it did not include the 60 acres. I have reached out to the traffic engineer to update that study. It hasn't been updated as of yet, but as this progresses through City Council and even through further phases of the Planning Commission, there will be updated traffic study presented or available at that time. The gravel road, I feel like there's still some confusion there, and I'll take the blame for that. The only portion that's going to be proposed to be gravel would be from where the actual homes are at to Douglas. The internal streets where homes would be built and then connecting into the existing Twin Eagles subdivision will be paved streets with curbs and sidewalks. That's not the intent. Also, in order to alleviate concerns of people using these, there's lots of tactics that we can employ here to keep it from being used that the developer is agreeable to do. Bollards being one of them, lockable bollards that only the fire department would have a key to, or a gate with a Knox box on it. Knox boxes being those same boxes that, again, only fire departments have access to, that would give no one access to these streets or this gravel access but the fire department itself. So we feel like that, if the issue is people using a gravel road, the gravel emergency access, we can prevent that from happening. Same thing with construction traffic. The whole issue of access in Douglas, from our standpoint, from the developer standpoint, if the community doesn't want us to access Douglas, then, we don't necessarily have to. That's the main, and we can still maintain emergency access through there as well, without having a permanent access to Douglas. The access to Douglas is coming from planning and engineering requesting us to do this, which we were happy to oblige them for it. But it does lead to other items, other concerns being brought up that the community has brought up. From our standpoint, Randy's been a long-time developer in Gallatin, providing affordable housing to lots of people, and even some of the speakers tonight are living in his subdivision. That was a 90-acre farm before he developed it, and even before that, phase one was several acres of farmland. Having the advantage of sitting in my office during this meeting, I went back through Google Earth and looked at some historical some imagery over the last few years. And yes, development is happening all over Gallatin. And I don't know how we prevent that from happening. It's what's keeping us all employed right now. And we do need to be responsible. We're trying to be responsible with these developments. And part of that is proper planning. This is something that Randy come to the city with probably back in 2016 or 2017. And in his previous representation, spoke to the city about this project before he bought the 60 acres. And at that time, it's his previous representation's stance that they were not aware that this access to Douglas would be required. That's something that did come up, started having that conversation with phases 14 and 13. And, you know, we did look through the zoning ordinance, we looked through the subregs. We can't find where it's required other than the fire code. And we feel like we can accommodate the fire code with emergency only access and put provisions in place for that. It seems like that would alleviate a lot of the concerns of the community and push the traffic back through the Twin Eagle subdivision. So from Randy's standpoint, from my standpoint, we're agreeable to compromise here, to working with the planning commission, to working with the city in order to try to make as many people happy as we can. If you want me to speak to the lot sizes, right now it's currently zoned R1A in the county. Minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. What's pushing those estate lots out there is number one, demand, and number two, soils. And right now this development would be on sewer. And so that's what's driving the lot sizes here to be consistent with the Twin Eagle subdivision. There are some 1.5 acre lots out there near the intersection of 25 and Douglas. I'm looking here on the GIS map as we speak. So the zoning as the county stands out there is not estate lots. It's 40,000 square foot. The larger lot sizes are due to the soil constraints. But thank you for coming back to me on this. Trying to make good use of everyone's time here. If there's any questions y'all have for me, feel free to ask. But it sounds like most everyone's concern here basically is the traffic on Douglas. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So we'll entertain questions or comments from members of the commission for staff.
Mr. Breer?
Yes.
Mr. Breer, this is Bill McCord. I want to iterate a couple of things. This is a request for annexation of only that area shown in the gray that's on your screen, and the master development plan and zoning is only for the area in gray. The area that's essentially shown with all the contour lines is not subject to the zoning, and it's not subject to annexation. So it's only the area in gray. So any request at this point that was indicated in the petition and was mentioned in several of the comments about creating a less denser product on this property that's on the western portion is not subject to tonight's discussion. I mean, obviously people have mentioned it, and there probably is a longer term plan that the developer intends to use that area for, but it's not part of these two requests. So, and I want to also reiterate that there has been substantial discussion at the last time that phase 14 was done, that the consensus was at that time there would be required alternative access provided that would distribute traffic away from the Wildcat Run and Highway 25 intersection. So that it was well known. I think it was well known both to staff, the developer, as well as the public and the decision bodies. So that should be no secret. And our concern right now is addressing the construction of the road, I guess, in relation to the master plan. And as Nick had mentioned, we believe that needs to be paved, and we realize that there isn't a cost associated with that. But this is not something that has not been known over the course of the development of the later stages of Twin Eagle subdivision. The staff recommendations are for approval of the annexation and plan of service resolution, as well as the zoning and master development plan.
Okay. I'm looking at Google. I'm looking at Google Earth, and I'm matching up this. Is this the plot of ground that has a pond in the center of it right now?
There is this is Andy again. There is a pond, Chairman, that is, it's in that hatched area that's hatched black. There is a pond in that area.
Okay, no, this is helpful. The image that we're seeing on there, I don't know how recent that Google Earth image is, but there's no construction, there's no homes to the two fields directly south of the hatched area, is there?
I can't tell at this scale. There is a house really close to it. It was Mr. Duncan's daughter lives there.
No, I'm sorry, not just.
Oh, yes, yeah. Phase 14 does not show up in this. You are correct.
Oh,
Phase
so there's
14
a
is-
phase, one of those, phase 14 is to the south of that and it doesn't show on the plans?
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't show on the Google Earth aerial.
And phase 14, are those two fields? Go back to that Google Earth image. I can't use a laser pointer or anything, but is phase 14 the two trapezoidal shaped fields directly to the south of the hatched area?
It's not the entire shape of it, but yeah, there you go.
Basically.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I have a question for the city engineer to please research while we're having this discussion. Nick, if you're still there. Mr. Binkley, Eamon Binkley, one of the people who spoke in the public hearing said that his property is on Douglas Lane. And he said that his property deed says that his property begins at 11 feet from the center line of the road. So if that's correct, that would mean that Douglas Lane is only a 22-foot right-of-way. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, but or if you can find it real quick with your magical.
Chairman, I don't know what the width of the right-of-way is. Of course, Douglas Lane is all Sumner County roadway right now, so I would check with Ms. Harden to see if she has any information. My guess is that she probably doesn't have any information to say what the width actually is of the right-of-way. I would say that it's like most of these old county roads, and I would be willing to bet that many of the deeds describe their property to the center line of the roadway. I wouldn't be shocked at that at all, that people actually technically own up to the center line of the roadway on a road like this. That's pretty common. And so that's what makes annexation of those types of roadways or improvements on those types of roadways very difficult, because that person that is adjacent to it must be agreeable to whatever improvements would need to be made. Now, that doesn't prohibit the county from doing maintenance on the existing road, because it would be considered a prescriptive right-of-way since the road exists and the county has presumably done some maintenance to it over the past, say, 20, 30, 50 years. And because they have done that, then and the road is considered to be prescriptive in nature. That would be my guess on a facility like this. And I think that, many of the callers and folks that spoke are correct. It's going to be very difficult to make any improvements to this road. I think Mr. Carmen suggested that Judy Harden made a comment about improvements that she would like to see, but again, that would mean that all of those property owners along that stretch of Douglas Lane from the access point for this development to Highway 25 would have to be agreeable, or the county themselves would have to step in and use any kind of power that they have to make the improvement themselves. I mean, the developer wouldn't have the capability of doing it.
Okay. Well, in order to generate some discussion with the commission, I'll put a motion on the floor to deny the request for annexation.
I'll second your motion, John.
You second the motion, Matt Harris?
I do.
Okay. So I'd like to state that my reason for denying the annexation is that if this area is developed in a hatched area, that adds X number more homes to this neighborhood. It's already been pointed out that we can't add any more homes onto the one entrance in and out of the Twin Eagle subdivision. So if it were to be approved, I would have to approve, I would feel compelled to approve the paved road all the way over to Douglas Lane because you need two accesses in and out. I don't want to approve the paved road all the way over to Douglas Lane because I don't think that Douglas Lane can handle the traffic. And I also think this is a domino effect that as soon as somebody has to put that much money into a paved road all the way over to Douglas Lane, they've got to recover their cost. It's inevitable that very quickly all of that will develop. And I think that that's a massive change to the community character area out there. I've been reading the general plan. That's going from large estate lots down to 6,000 square foot lots, if I read this correctly. So this is a real treasure of an area out there in Sumner County. When I think of Douglas Lane, that's what I think of as the character of Sumner County, and it drastically changes it. And then I think it would also require or necessitate major road improvements all the way down to Douglas Lane, which couldn't possibly make sense for the developer. So I think that Twin Eagles has kind of reached its boundaries and doesn't have any business expanding and doesn't have a way to expand left. Unfortunately, it can't expand to the north either because there's no stub outs up in that direction. That's my reason. So discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I mean, I just really for me, really to reiterate, John, my biggest concerns with this is the access and out of Twin Eagles and putting that traffic on the Douglas Lane. I know for the short term, it's being discussed as emergency access for fire trucks, but inevitably, if that continues, it's going to have the outlet. And Douglas Lane on average, when I went out there, it's about an 18-foot wide strip of pavement, and I don't see how you ever improve it. So I tend to concur. I think this is not a good idea for the city of Gallatin right now.
Mrs. Hibbler, did you wish to speak?
Yes, sir, I did. I have a question because this is maybe a little bit, the development's been here for a while and I'm newer, but I was looking at the different access points on the Highway 109 side. Was there a reason that the developer didn't connect to that as an access point entry?
I can answer that question. That there was a discussion about a northern bypass route that TDOT drew up I wouldn't say drew up preliminary plans, but they did a preliminary study, and it was to extend Hatton Track across 109 and loop all the way over to, I believe, Greenway Boulevard. But there was a lot of opposition with that route, and Randy, the developer here, was one of those opposed to that extension around because it would have cost him a lot of development lots there. I kind of wish there had been an access point there, but there's no way to access 109 now. Now, if the developer would like to respond to Ms. Hibbler's question, please do.
No, John, this is Andy. The reason we can't access 109 outside of what you just said about the Hatton Track is TDOT limits that access. They would not grant Mr. Jones another access to 109, even if he wanted it.
So would other members of the commission like to weigh in on the discussion? I'll just go around the table since Councilman Fennell, do you have any comments?
If I heard it right, Andy, you said that back in the day, there was a traffic survey on the houses that's already been built out, but this additional proposal right here, there has not been any kind of traffic survey for it, correct?
You are correct, and Nick can probably chime in on this as well. I think the original traffic study covered the 90 acres in the back. When I say back, I'm talking about phases 5 through 12. It also included a lot of commercial up front, which, as you all well know, that commercial has dwindled down to 2 tracts of land right now that are currently set aside as potential commercial. So the commercial property on the front of Twin Eagles is really been cut well in half since that time. So there have been a lot of changes since the original traffic study, and we're working on getting that updated right now with just the residential. And let me add in too, just for full transparency, the intent is for the developer to develop this entire 60 acres in like fashion with the rest of Twin Eagles. So even though we didn't show it because we're only asking for a portion to be annexed now. But in full disclosure, everyone is right. The intent is to develop as much of the 60 acres as we can.
Does the developer, Randy, does he own any more property north or south of that he could get a different connectivity?
He does not own any more property at this time to the north or south, with the exception of phase 13, but I mean, it's up front. And we brought this up at Planning Commission a few months ago. We pulled it from the agenda, but we did have the discussion. Phase 13, the next section of 13 will connect to 25 and also will be connected into the Cumberland Point. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Cumberland Point, but the next development, the townhome development there to the west of us, will be connected into that too. So eventually Twin Eagles will have 3 potential access points off of 25, even though they're all relatively close together.
Councilman Fennell, I think your question is, is there the potential to connect this neighborhood to expand it out on the northern boundary, which is up there where it says Beacon Way and Lucy
Yes,
Drive?
that's kind of what I was referring to.
Yeah, I'm looking at Google Earth, and that's completely built out without any road stub out, and the houses are completely built out along there. You'd have to buy a house, tear it down, and push a road cut through there. So there's no way out of the north boundary or the western leg.
Chairman, this is Nick, the engineer again. And the reason why that was done like that is because there's actually an environmental easement placed on that entire piece of property. I guess a reservation, a green belt type of a reservation. So nothing will be built on that for, I think it's a 100-year type of a reservation. So there was no stub out required when that phase of development came in.
Right. Did you have any additional comments, Councilman Fennell?
I think I'm hearing it right. I think engineering is also saying that with this additional proposal that it would stress what we've already got in the streets that we've already got right now. Am I hearing that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Fennell. That's why we've recommended to have the connection to Douglas Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else on the commission like to speak? Albert? Dr. Orgain?
Well, I'm good. Did you get a second?
Yes, sir. It was a motion by me to deny the request for annexation, and it was seconded by Matt Harris.
Yeah. You all make very good points. Very, very succinct points.
Mr. Wilson, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay.
The only follow-up comment I would make, I'm not sure how it would go, but it never. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I just wanted to identify you for the record. Mrs. Hibbler speaking.
Thank you, sir. I was saying I'm not sure how TDOT might respond, but asking just because of the accessibility that we're trying to create, it never hurts to ask. So that being part of the plan going forward, if they're trying to go forward as a development, would be something I would suggest.
Are you referencing the possibility of an access point up there at the northeast corner of the property near where Hatton Track ties in?
The middle point, I think yeah, you're saying like Sparrow Lane, that area? Yes, sir. Talking about there?
Yeah, we don't have the advantage of a laser pointer.
Okay. So what are the yellow? Yeah, the yellow box to the right. Yeah, I'm seeing the purple. Yeah.
My understanding is there's no chance of there being an access there.
Okay. I just heard the comment.
Ms.
that TDOT
Hibbler,
asked and they said no, but you know, it's been a while, so, but I'm seeing the purple. Slowly.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
This is Nick. Ms. Hibbler, yeah, from, I don't know if you can see where it says Franciscan, right there, that little cul-de-sac area. Essentially from that point all the way up to the north boundary of the Twin Eagle development where it says Lucy up there, all of that area will be the interchange. And so there's not going to be an opportunity for sure for Twin Eagles to have any connection to 109 or the interchange there because of the way that's being constructed. So the only opportunity would be somewhere further south where Wildcat Run begins to parallel 109. And you know,
Okay.
I know
I see what you're saying.
Chairman Preyer has already mentioned the fact that no stub outs were left. Obviously, a house would have to be demolished to make that kind of connection, and really it would probably be still, unless the city of Gallatin was very strongly in favor of it, it would still be a difficult thing to get from TDOT because of the access there, the traffic signal at Red River Road, and then the alternate or the separated grade interchange that the city of Gallatin has spent a lot of money on to try to keep from creating new access points on 109.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Really the only opportunity for connection for any phases of expansion for Twin Eagles would be over to Douglas Lane, or if there were some properties that were purchased that would go to the west of Cumberland Point, and that's going to be really a roundabout way to get back to Highway 25, because none of all those little cul-de-sacs there, Community, Weather Vane, Hedgeway, and Lily Crest, I think it is. Only one of them was stubbed out, and that was Weather Vane, and it was stubbed into a lot that has been developed or built already as a single family house that accesses the end of Weather Vane. So to make a connection from one of those, or from Weather Vane, you would have to take out at least one brand new house that was there, and I'm not sure exactly how the parcel layout is connecting back to Highway 25. So there's nothing easy to get to Highway 25, and State Route 109 is almost impossible. So Douglas Lane is certainly the path of least resistance.
Okay. The Google Maps was kind of fuzzy, so I guess it was the Francescan Way that you were mentioning, and the Boxwood Court was the area. It wouldn't just, I couldn't see it, but I understand now. Thank you.
Well, we have a motion on the floor and a second, and we've had discussion by most members. I will call for the vote. So the motion, to restate the motion is to deny the request for annexation and plan of service for item number 11, which is number 2020-058. The motion was made by me, seconded by Matt Harris. Josh, will you take a roll call vote? A vote of yes means you deny the request for annexation.
Mr. Strother?
Yes.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Yes.
Councilman Fennell?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
Chair Preyer?
Yes. The motion to deny the request for annexation carries unanimously. I would move to item 12, but I think that if the annexation has been, well, this is a recommendation to council. We need to discuss item 12, and we need to take a vote on that as well. These items go to council, and I need to remind all of us who are listening that this is not the final, this body doesn't have the final word on this. So we will address item number 12, which is Twin Eagles, Phase 15, the rezoning with preliminary master development plan.
Dustin Shane, Gallatin Planning. As stated, this is about 15 acres adjacent to the existing Twin Eagles development. It's for R1A county zoning right now. They're proposing to zone to MU mixed use. There are no commercial uses in this, but the rest of Twin Eagles is zoned MU, so they're keeping it consistent. It's 37 single-family lots, ranging from about 7,000 to 10,000 square feet. The buffer yard on the western edge was smaller than what we required by code, but they do have a signed agreement with the adjoining property owner for that buffer yard. Architecture will be what's similar to what's already existing in Twin Eagles. And planning department does recommend approval. Thank you.
We have a representative for the applicant present.
This is Andy Leith representing the applicant. We've stated everything we've got. If you've got any questions, we'll answer.
Okay, this item does come with a public comment. I have to open the floor for a public comment, but I ask you please, if you spoke at the last public comment, I ask that you please not reiterate the same comments or call in again. We tried to handle both of those public comments in one, but I do need to open the floor for a public comment.
John, this is Latisha Alexander, staff attorney.
Thank you.
That was the reason that you did it the way you did previously. You already opened the floor to public comments on both 11 and 12 at one time. So the floor has been opened. There's no need to reopen it again.
Very good. All right, I just wanted to make sure I was following proper procedure. So forget that. I didn't open the public comment. It was
Mr.
open.
Chairman?
Yes.
This is Bill McCord again. Given the recommendation of the Planning Commission on the annexation, these are separate items, and it's possible, I don't think it's likely, but it's possible that the Planning Commission and or council could recommend adopting the rezoning on this property. It's not in the city right now, so it's not in the planning region. The planning region boundary forms the south boundary and the west boundary. So you don't have extraterritorial jurisdiction to establish zoning on the property. So I think that kind of moves your hand in this situation to make a motion to not consider. If there was any consideration, I don't think you're going that way, but if you wanted to go that way, you couldn't offer alternative zoning. For example, R40, which is the same as R1A, or some other type of zoning. So you have a request for MU zoning, and unless you were willing to annex the property, you couldn't establish city zoning on it.
Right. I think
good point.
Yeah. My understanding is we can't possibly vote to approve item number 12 with a unanimous vote to decline item number 11.
That's correct.
Okay.
You know, in many areas around the city, however, you do have extraterritorial zoning where you could establish, even though we wouldn't annex, we have a zoning authority. This is not one of those areas.
Oh, you mean the planning region stops at that fence row on the back of
On the south, yeah, on the south and the east sides of the property subject to this zoning request, that's the planning boundary. So it's outside the planning boundary.
Okay.
Planning region.
So we've heard from the staff, we've heard from the applicant. Does anyone have any comments? Any commissioners have any questions or concerns or comments or wish to make a motion?
I don't have any comments, but I'll make a motion to deny item 12, the rezoning of Twin Eagles Phase 15.
Second by Albert Strawley. Motion by Matt Harris to recommend denying the rezoning and preliminary master development plan, and it was seconded by Albert Strawley. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, you might want to give a couple of reasons at least why you're recommending denial of the zoning as well.
Yeah, glad to. My reasons for recommending the denial of the rezoning is that we're already recommending that we deny the annexation of the property, and to rezone the property would be inappropriate. And furthermore, even if we were willing to annex it, to rezone the property MU without the access, without the second access or improvements Douglas Lane to handle the traffic, it's just not good planning.
I concur with Mr. Harris's comments.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as stated will indicate by saying aye. If you're opposed to Mr. Harris's motion, then say no. Take a roll call vote, please, Josh.
Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
Chair Puryear?
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. The rezoning and preliminary master development plan is denied, or recommendation for denial has been passed on to City Council. Okay. Before we move to item 13, does anyone need a break?
Let's keep going then.
Okay. Item number 13 is resolution number 2020-062, Montgomery office, rezoning with preliminary master development plan. Which staff member is handling this item?
This is Jillian Ogden, staff planner.
Go ahead, Jillian.
Yes. Dustin, if you could go to the next slide, please. This property is located off of Nashville Pike. This is in our Nashville Pike corridor plan, so keep that in mind throughout my presentation this evening. The applicant requests to rezone a half-acre lot from R40 low-density residential to MRO multiple residential and office district with a preliminary master development plan to convert an existing residential building into an office space located at 1191 Nashville Pike. As you can see, based on the zoning map that is up on your screen, this is one of the few parcels in this area of Nashville Pike that has not yet been rezoned to MRO. So this proposed zoning is consistent with the objectives of this corridor plan, as well as the Gallatin on the Move 2020 plan. Justin, if you could go to the site plan. One more. Okay. The PMDP includes proposed parking and landscaping. Most of the mature canopy trees will remain, and buffer yards will be supplemented with the required vegetation as necessary. You can see these existing trees on the plan that was resubmitted, as well as the trees that will be added in the future to accommodate those buffer yards. The existing driveway will also be removed, and the business will be accessed by a joint access easement across the front of the property. This is also consistent with the corridor plan. No additional development is proposed behind the existing house and driveway adjacent to the existing residential subdivision, so there will not be any further intrusion on those residential neighbors. There will be some vegetation added back there for buffer yard, but there will not be any additional construction back behind the house. This item does require a public comment, and it will go on to City Council with a recommendation from the Planning Commission for review, since this is a rezoning and a new PMBP. And the applicant is here, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. If we have a representative for the applicant, please state your name for the record.
This is Andy Leith, Greenlee Design, and I'm here for your questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions, comments for staff or for the applicant?
Is that enough parking with this?
They are proposing 9 spaces, which is the maximum amount they're allowed to have.
Okay, thank you.
So yes.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. I'll make a motion to approve with all 3 of the staff conditions.
We do have to do a public comment for this one.
Thank you. My mistake. Sorry, Matt. Let me open this to a public comment for the Montgomery office item. Josh, is there anyone who wishes to speak in regards to this item?
If anyone is on the line that would like to speak, please indicate so by raising your hand. Mr. Chair, at this time, no one has indicated they'd like to speak on this item.
Okay. I'll close the public comment. Now, Matt, if you don't mind, restate your motion so it's in order.
Matt, you're off.
Matt Harris has made a motion to recommend approval with the 3 conditions stated in the staff's report. Do I hear a second?
I'll second Matt's.
Second by Councilman Fennell. Any discussion on that? The only thing I'll add is I think they did a really good job with the site plan. Notice there's not even a curb cut on the Nashville Pike. They're using the access on the frontage road left and right. Plan looks good. Seeing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. Josh, if you'll call a roll call vote.
Mr. Strother? Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson? Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
Chair Puryear?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Unanimous vote to recommend approval. With that, we will move to item number 14, and I'm going to pass the I'm going to pass item number 14 over to the Vice Chair, Matt Harris, and let him handle that. I'm sorry, but I need to excuse myself for a moment.
All right, so item 14 is resolution number 2020-068, Cairo Estates amended preliminary master development plan and revised final master development plan. Who from staff is handling this for us?
That would be me, Mr. Vice Chair. This is an amended PMDP, revised FMDP to amend a buffer yard in certain areas within the Cairo Estates subdivision. We've discussed this a couple times at work session about buffer yard and required plantings being in single-family residential lots. We heard quite a bit of feedback from the residents of this neighborhood and worked with the overall developer to account for the trees that were planted and then to disperse some of the other plantings on some of the smaller lots into common open space. So on your screen is sheet C 5.0. That is where the required landscaping in several buffer yards has ended up either in the rear of some lots, in the front of some lots, and also in between certain lots, as indicated in the staff report. Staff recommends approval of the amended PMDP, revised FMDP, and we'd also like to have a discussion with the Planning Commission about requiring buffer yards to be in common open space lot to reduce this issue from occurring in the future.
Okay. Do we have a representative for the applicant?
This is Andy Leith, Greenlit Design. No, he'll be here for your questions.
Okay. Josh, I think, going through this, we've seen, the need to have in the open space requirements, for this very reason. So I think that's something we can definitely keep a conversation on as we go. Is staff satisfied? Does this alleviate the concerns that staff has with the buffer yards on this property?
It does. We've worked both with the homeowners and the developer to account for the trees, all of the required trees, and put them in places within the subdivisions where they would be easier to maintain and still give some of the single-family residential units, especially along this eastern boundary against the airport property. It would allow them a greater backyard than doing a strict mandate of the buffer yard would allow them.
Okay, that makes sense. I see this. We got a note for a public comment. Do we need to open a public comment for this item?
We do.
All right.
There was included included in the packet. Well, the applicant did do outreach to the subdivision. We had one email comment that was supportive of the plan with some very specific guidelines for not cutting an underground dog fence, and that was included in the packets. That was the only public outreach before the meeting. And looking at the attendees list, there is no one that has not spoken yet. There's no, all of the attendees have had the ability to speak previously on other items, but if they'd like to speak on this issue, please either unmute your microphone or raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to speak on this item. Mr. Harris, no one has indicated they'd like to speak on this item, and no additional emails have been sent regarding this item.
All right, well, based on that, we will close the public comment for this item, and I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
Can I also ask Andy a question? Andy, are you okay with this?
Yes, we are.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, so we had a motion for approval by Mr. Fennell and a second by, I believe, Mr. Wilson. Any discussion on the item? All right, well, seeing none, yes, sir.
I'd make one comment.
Yes.
I agree that we need to vote yes to approve this, but just want to kind of go on record of saying that when we do this, this means that we need an HOA and common ground with every subdivision moving forward. We don't need any subdivisions where the landscaping is on the private property as we did at Langley Hall. And my only question for staff is how will we handle a 5-acre property that's tracked up into 2 parks or 3 parks or 5 1-acre lots? It's a minor subdivision plat. Will that require an HOA?
Thank you, Mr. Prier. That is a question that we will work with applicants to help identify at the beginning of projects and help them work through with their clients on the long-term ownership and maintenance of both buffer yards, open space, but also stormwater requirements and the long-term maintenance that comes along with those.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I also would like, if it's agreeable to the maker of the motion, that y'all consider this a minor amendment.
I would agree with that, the minor amendment.
And then second that.
Right. So does anybody else have anything to add to it before we go to a vote for it being a minor amendment and for approval? All right, seeing none, Josh, if you do a roll call vote for item 14, Cairo Estates to be a minor amendment and approval of the item.
Mr. Strother?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler?
Aye.
Councilman Fennell?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson? Dr. Orgain?
Yes.
And Chair Purrier, were you recusing yourself from the vote, or did you just step away temporarily?
No, I just excused myself to go to the restroom.
I just wanted to make sure. Chair Purrier?
Aye.
So the motion carries unanimously, and I will at this point turn the meeting back over to Chair Purrier.
Okay. So that takes care of our regular agenda items. Other business, we need to discuss the community residential home ordinance that we talked about in work study. So Bill, are you handling that?
Yes, sir. Before you, you have a copy of a draft ordinance, and it's an early draft, but the gist of this is to allow for homes for the aged, as we have discussed before, and we had a resident who had approached the Planning Commission last fall, I believe it was, and had asked for the city to consider amending its zoning ordinance to allow for homes for the aged. Homes for the Aged is a licensed facility by the state of Tennessee, and they have a statute that governs what is a home for the aged and how they operate and how large they can be. So to be a little more proactive in this regard is that there are many other types of facilities that are very similar for the home for the aged. We currently have a statute that allows for homes for the mentally handicapped to be located in residential zoning districts. And we classify those as community residential homes, and that only refers to that particular statute. This would expand the definition of community residential home to additional homes, including home for the aged and the adult care home, which is a very similar type of facility. It also would allow for assisted care facility on a limited basis, which is almost identical as well as described in the statute. And it also would authorize what they define as a traumatic brain injury residential home, all listed in Title 68, Chapter 11 of the Tennessee Code Annotated. So there are limits on how large these can be, and the definition of community residential home is shown on the first page of the draft ordinance. Goes into a little detail describing how large they can be, and it's not intended to be a medical facility. It's just the normal residential facility where there's not acute medical care given. So a hospice home and things like that would not be included in this, or a home that would provide a day long and night long 24-hour care is not included in this definition of community residential home. But it would allow for these types of homes to be located in residential districts, and those are listed on your second and third pages for the most part. So we have it would become a conditional use in an area where the density gets much higher, it's potentially much higher. So once we get into the R6 zoning district, that's when it becomes a conditional use. And there are standards for conditional uses for these types of homes that are listed in Article 15. In addition to those listed in Article 15, a community residential home would also have to meet those conditions, even though a conditional use is not required. So there's a little repetition here. And again, this is for discussion at this time. We certainly will bring it back to you in a little more refined, based on tonight's comments, a really refined manner at our work session next month, which is on the 7th, by the way, next week. And so or excuse me, 2 weeks. Yeah, not next week, but the week after that. So I want you to be cognizant of the strategy that we're pursuing here to allow for an expansion of these types of facilities simply because they differ basically in name only, not in the function that they perform. So again, the gist of this is that community residential homes, the definition's expanded, their permitted uses in the residential districts, the higher density residential districts, they become a conditional use. Those conditional uses are listed in Article 15. It also provides for a home occupation, permittable use for a home occupation for a home health care provider, which is also described by the state statute, and it has some conditions for that. Now, we do allow home-based businesses throughout the city, and this would be one of those types with the 5 conditions that are listed there. So this would be an amendment, of course, to the zoning ordinance, and it would go to council for review and approval as well. So we'll entertain questions on that now. We certainly will bring it back with any changes that you want to either identify now or take this home or keep this home with you, I guess, in this case, and be able to provide comment to us on the next work session.
Mr. McCoy, I've got a question. It's Matt Harris. So this ordinance would be for, if you're in the city, but a neighborhood that has an HOA with covenants and restrictions that would not allow this use. Would that still be in effect, or would, so neighborhood that had CCNRs that said you can't, operate this type of business. We're not interfering with that.
Yeah, we don't get involved in the homeowners association. It's statutorily allowed. So, Latisha, you might want to say something about whether a statute would override any homeowners association. I know they have some things that do statutes, like flying the American flag and things like that allow for the state to supersede, if you will, the homeowners association. I don't believe this is one of those uses, though.
Some of these are federal. When you get into that, you're getting into big time statutory stuff.
Yeah. And this really opens the door and clarifies that these are permitted uses where they're currently not identified as such in our code. Only the one that's essentially allows this, other than homeowners association, is the Title 13, Chapter 24. I think I referenced it here. No, Chapter 4. No, Chapter 24. Excuse me. Section 101 through 104.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Are there any specialty groups that you left out, Bill?
There are, and there are most of those, or a lot of those, that are listed in, and I can provide that to you at the next meeting. It's really a list of definitions in the statute in Title 68. They are more medically oriented types of uses. So like a home for the hospice and some of those like that, where people are getting 24/7 medical attention and care. That's where excluding those types of homes.
Would that be the next project?
In hospitals, in many nursing homes in neighborhoods. That's not the intent here.
Would that be a project for the next one to consolidate all of those into a similar?
Well, they could, and there might be opportunities to address that, but at this point, for example, it could be a conditional use for those types of homes, like a hospice home in certain zoning districts, maybe even less dense. The thing is, you got a lot of emergency vehicles that usually respond to those types of places, and again, it is more of a business type, almost like a mini hospital or clinic in a situation like that, which is not a normal residential use. And that's one reason that the existing statute exists, is they want these residents to live in a residential setting.
It's a great idea that you're doing that.
So Matt, we will get back and try to get an answer for you in detail on the applicability of homeowners association documents or covenants and restrictions as it relates to this.
Well, with that business covered, I will bring up one other bit of business. Well, two other things. One, I just wanted to make mention of, we had a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting the other night, and a variance was granted for a duplex. The variance had to do with lot size. The applicant argued that the code needs to be revisited because, if I understood it correctly, the minimum lot size for a duplex to be considered without a variance is 20,000 square feet. Tell me if I'm going off base here, Bill.
It's 22,000 in that particular zoning district. It's 22,500 square feet to be eligible for a duplex in that zoning district.
Okay, and so the issue that the applicant raised was that he was asking for a variance because the code is outdated, that you can hardly find 22,000 square foot lots anymore. There's not a lot of them out there. I don't know whether I do or don't agree with that, but is that something that we need to look at, Bill, and discuss? Would that be handled at the planning commission level, or is that something that council would adopt?
Well, the planning commission would make a recommendation to council to change the zoning code. As it stands now, I believe that's what was an R15 zoning district. And in the way the code's written now, that if you want to build a duplex and get a conditional use to be able to qualify to build a duplex in the R15 zoning district, you have to have 22,500 square feet of land. In this particular case, they didn't have but I think 11,000 square feet, or
13,000.
Substantially less than 22,000. But in this case, the BZA granted them a variance of whatever the difference between 22,000 and 11,000. I forgot exactly what it was, 11,000 something, almost doubling the size or the density, if you will, what's intended at that district by granting that variance. And then, of course, once the variance was approved, the conditional use was kind of shoot in.
May I ask where that property was located at?
On Langwood Drive.
Is this the one that we looked at, a month or so ago and voted to deny it? Or is
I think we asked for an advisory opinion on that one.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm bringing this up is I was the dissenting opinion, but I think that if staff is of the opinion that the applicant's argument had some merit to it, that the code is too high, the minimum threshold for that square footage is too high, then let's look at it. But I don't want to grant another variance the next go around and keep granting variances. Let's fix the code instead of granting variances. That's my point. So that's the only issue I wanted to bring up to staff.
Yeah. Now, one thing about that is that if we do lower the standard to, and I don't know how far you might want to go, but it can substantially change the character of the neighborhood if it's already been developed as, in this case, that subdivision was all single family homes and it had one vacant lot. And that vacant lot was smaller than what's even allowed if that were developed today to be created. So you couldn't even develop that lot today. You can build a single family home on it, but you couldn't develop it and plat that lot at 11,000 square feet, of course, without a variance, even today. But then the BZA then turned around and also not only, allowed them, which they were entitled, would allow them to build a single family, but allowed them to build a duplex for a two family.
Yeah, just to be real clear, Bill, I'm not even closely suggesting that you change the lot threshold down to the variance that was granted. I'm just saying I want to remove that objection. And if it's 22,000 square foot is the threshold for a duplex, and that's unreasonable, maybe it should be 18,000 or 19, whatever, something, a reasonable modification of the code. I'm not suggesting cutting it in half.
Okay.
But I'll remove that so in the future somebody's not.
Maybe 1.5 times the minimum lot size, so which is 15,000, and add another 7,000. I think that's probably where they got to the 22,000. So.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's right as it is then. The only other issue I'll bring up is that during our review on Friday, I foolishly suggested to Bill that since we haven't gotten our required property rights training in place, that we should just tack an hour of training onto this meeting. I'm glad we didn't. But at some point we should, and since these remote meetings may go for a while, I was suggesting that we have maybe an online webinar instead of asking everybody to gather somewhere for in-person training. We're required by the legislature to have 1 hour of property rights training per year.
Yeah, and 3 other hours of other training, so. Yeah, we can make that arrangement if y'all want us to begin that process again. We had some people lined up to do this training for the end of March. Of course, that got sidetracked. So we can contact those folks, see if they're willing to do that. If they have a lot of exhibits and things like that that they would want to present, I'm not sure they would, then that might make it a little more difficult. But we've made it through this process, and I think it went pretty smoothly tonight, and we might be able to arrange that. It's just whether or not the people we can get in contact are willing to go to that extent.
Is that something we could put together by the next work session, or is that way too quick?
Well, we'll just have to contact them to find if it's too quick. I don't know.
Well, then I'll ask the members, if everybody could speak up, how would you feel about adding an hour of training to the next work session, which is in 2 weeks?
That's fine with me.
It's okay with me.
I'm good.
It should be. I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see what we'll contact that person that we had slated to fill that slot, and we'll see if they're available for next week. If not, we'll try to fit them in a real, maybe even the next regular meeting or immediately after adjourning the next regular meeting. Let's go back together as a group, and then we'll maybe able to have them live.
Is that work session next week, like a week from tonight, or is it 2 weeks from tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the May work session is Monday, May 4th. Planning Commission is Monday, May 18th, because of the Memorial Day holiday on the 25th.
Oh, okay. So just to remind everybody again, we have a work session 1 week from tonight.
The packets will be going out on Wednesday. We have a check print meeting tomorrow with the city staff and city engineering staff.
Okay.
It might be kind of difficult for us to arrange that type of meeting for training on the 4th.
Yeah, I would think it would. Are there any other announcements or any other business, Bill?
That'd be it, but I'd appreciate if you give that draft ordinance a lot of thought, so we'll have a lot of comments next time, and we'll be able to, narrow it down if that's what you want to do, or expand it even.
Okay.
Thank you all for the draft.
Lana? Yes.
I was just saying thank you very much for the work you put into the draft. It looks really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I need to do a roll call vote for that, Latasha?
Latasha Alexander, staff attorney, I'm still here, and no, you do not need to do a vote at all because it's the end of the agenda, so.
Okay. All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, guys. Y'all be careful.
Thank you all. Good meeting.
Be blessed, be safe.